Poundcake's mom
I need a freak.
knew this song. I need a freak?
I need a freak to be my home computer set. I don't
That's
think
right.
so.
You don't think so?
I hope not. With curly hair. Yeah. When I need this freak, I need her to be...
This was a band. I love the band name. The song is called I Need a Freak, and it's probably early 80s. The band, right here in Cleveland, was called Sexual Harassment. That's my favorite part. Now, I only mention this because the guy behind it was a guy named Lynn Tolliver, who just died, and he was a big, big deal in Cleveland radio, black radio in Cleveland. I only knew the name Lynn Tolliver because I was a radio nerd, and I knew names and things like that. But Lynn Tolliver, who was on the air here for 30 years or something, he put ZAK on the map, by the way. He had been a record guy for a little while. He won all kinds of industry awards, part of the Cleveland Association of Broadcasters. I met him one time at one of those like radio conferences. I didn't go to many of them, but I knew the name. And so when I saw that he had died, and again, this predates all of us. I mean, obviously, predates me in radio, but back in the day, he was like a big deal. And, you know, in the 80s, they were doing stunts like, you know, hey, come on down with your underwear on your head and that kind of stuff. But that's what people dug. But the thing that jumped out at me was, before all that, he was putting out songs with sexual harassment. And he got a couple $1 million because the Black Eyed Peas sampled this for My Humps and didn't pay him.
Oh.
So
I hear it now.
This is very 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
I need a freak. And so, but imagine putting out a band called Sexual Harassment. That's what I like. Yeah, so about a decade ago, he won a couple $1 million.
How could they put that?
Because he sued Black Eyed Peas. They sold 2 million copies of My Humps.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Because I can hear it now, and I don't understand how they could put that in there and not think people would notice or just not care. So that was either negligence or just not caring.
But there were a lot of bands and a lot of record labels that were playing the odds on not getting sued. Because when somebody... That required them going to court, too. He clearly wanted a judgment on this. There are a lot of artists who settle out of court, who go, hey, listen, that's my song. We can either go to court, you can cut me a check. And the record label, most of the time, if it came to that, would cut somebody a check. If they wanted to go to court, because the label obviously would just offer them a pittance. Now, I don't know. I'm theorizing all this. I don't know if that's what happened with him. But he sued the Black Eyed Peas and got a $1.2 million judgment by a jury over My Humps. Wow. And, you know, for all kinds of lawsuits, you have to obviously create a reasonable doubt. But anytime there's a case of a music thing going to court, there's such firm evidence one way or the other. Yeah. There are people who sue artists all the time and go, that was my song. And a jury goes, these songs aren't even, they're not even similar at all. But Tom Petty sued people over songs. Ray Parker Jr. was a very famous plagiarism case. The Ghostbusters theme song. Huey Lewis sued Ray Parker Jr. He said the Ghostbusters theme song is I Want a New Drug. And they're like, no, it's not, you know. And they ruled in favor of Huey Lewis. But a lot of artists will go to court and go, that's my song. And the artist that's being alleged to have plagiarized, I know, I didn't, you know, there's just ideas that are floating out in the air, you know. But if it's like a keyboardy early 80s beat like that, because those could just be lifted wholesale and put into rap songs. What's that?
Didn't Vanilla Ice get sued by Queen?
Yeah, that's another one, sure. Ice Ice Baby.
Under Pressure, and he was like, no, mine goes da-na-na-na-na-na, and like theirs is da-da-da-da-da-da.
And I'm not sure what they're trying to delay in that case, because Vanilla Ice is a perfect example of a guy who, how stupid did he think people were?
Right.
Like, dude, we know that sampling wasn't even a rare thing. Starting to get paid for your samples took a while. But everybody was pulling other people's music. Men in Black is Forget Me Not by what's her name? Patrice Rushen. The
Wild Wild West is Stevie, not Stevie, the blind guy.
Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
Stevie Wonder. The Will Smith Wild Wild West is samples the Stevie Wonder song too.
Yeah.
We got this.
This is Patrice Rushen, Forget Me Not. This was like late
Yeah,
70s,
this is Men in
early
Black,
80s.
yeah.
Man, this is Men in Black, right? Because it's a sweet bass line and it's got so it makes sense. Now, I don't know if he paid her or not. I think this was like her one hit. So this was a very recognizable thing. But so anyway, short story long, Lynn Tolliver died, and people who have been listening to radio for a long, long time in Cleveland knew him or had heard him. He died on Sunday. He was a big deal here back in the 80s and 90s. And again, I only knew that name way before I came to Cleveland because he was a big deal. He had come here from Detroit. But Sexual Harassment is a great name for a band. You're going to catch people's eyes and ears with that. Sexual Chocolates.
Yeah, I feel like it's something that you could get away with in the 80s. I don't know if you
Oh,
could
yeah,
do
absolutely
it
not
now.
now.
Yeah.
But back then you could. Biz Marquee. Yeah, again, listen. Rappers are all using somebody else's music, and, That's why the Beastie Boys were such a big deal, because they were musicians. And they were playing music. So even if you liked rap music, you were like, here's guys that are playing instruments. Which wasn't unprecedented, but it certainly was not the norm.
Well, that's why when people stopped sampling things and started creating their own beats and stuff, that kind of changed the whole way they made music.
Yeah.
But, it was basically they would sample that stuff because they didn't have any instruments to play in the early days of hip-hop. You guys know this.
Yes, in the very
pretty
earliest
sure.
days. That's right.
Yeah, Robin Thicke.
Oh, yeah, he got busted, too.
It was
right?
Robin Thicke and Pharrell, and that was Blurred Lines.
But
and,
even Marvin Gaye's family said he didn't rip off Marvin Gaye.
Marvin Gaye, their family got that money.
Marvin Gaye did not comment on it.
Well, Marvin Gaye didn't say anything, no. He was dead. But the family did get paid out. So either it was, they were like, oh, he didn't do anything. Oh, wait a minute. How much we getting paid? Okay, yeah, he did something. So,
By the way, Marvin Gaye, a good example of why it's not so bad to not have a dad.
That's right, yeah.
oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misspoke. Stevie Wonder said that he didn't think that Robin Thicke stole from Marvin Gaye and that Marvin Gaye's family shouldn't sue over it.
Marvin Gaye.
But again, that was clearly a song where he took the Marvin Gaye song and put new words over it.
But then that particular song was also copied again by Charlie Puth and Meghan Trainor. It was called Let's Marvin Gaye and Get It On. They mentioned his name.
But if you pay for the
Right.
rights to use the music, it's fine. Like,
but they
Jay-Z's
did.
done it a bunch of times.
Yeah, these days it's a piece of cake.
Is that up to the label to decide? Because I feel like that's a way to screw your artist over. If you want to make your artist look bad and look like they're a copycat, say if they're not doing something that the label wants them to do, the label could be like, okay, well, we're going to have you promote this song, play it, and if they don't get it cleared, it looks bad on the artist and not the label. Right?
What?
Okay, let's say if you're an artist and you're signed to a label.
Yep.
And so there's a song that you like, and unbeknownst to you, this is a song that was like, popular in the 80s or 90s. You just don't know. You're not aware of it. The label knows that, and they might want to make you look bad.
Why would the label want to make one of their artists look bad?
To compromise them.
But they've invested money in this. They're spending money on this artist. They're not trying to tank their artist.
I feel, but
And they would still be responsible for that situation. If they're putting that music out.
I feel like the labels have.
They're at least going to be named in a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're the ones with the deep pockets, not the artist.
But it's still the artist that gets sued. You don't hear about Robin Thicke's label getting sued. They hear about Robin Thicke getting sued.
Well, because he was probably the songwriter. He was probably but I don't know that his label didn't get sued.
And I'm just saying, like, the negligence involved, like, a label's not going to push a song that they don't co-sign on. Like, they wouldn't want to get radio play off of a song that they don't like. So they are behind this.
Yeah, but they go to the artist first. A lot of bands had to contend with this. They'd take their album to the label, and the label would go, nah,
Now,
we don't want to put this out, or you got to change some of these songs, or that's where that's where you end up with friction between the label and the artist.
they don't care about that. They have the artist in a contract. What's the artist going to do? Quit?
No, the artist will go, well, I want my music to be out there. So if the label goes, big bands have turned in albums, and the label goes, we don't hear a single on this. Where's the single? Well, this is the single. Well, we thought this song would be the single. No, we don't want to put that out. You got to write something.
Rhapsody's the single. No, I'm in love with my car. You haven't seen that movie yet, Alan. So
You haven't seen that movie, Alan?
No.
It's good.
But it happens all the time. Like it happened to Skinnerd, and it happened to all. It's.
But I think you're underestimating the fact that artists nowadays, I'm not talking about back in the 80s and 90s, a lot of things were different because artists made a lot of their money from record sales. Now, with these contracts that they're put in, like with these 360 deals, I feel like...
Well, I don't know anything about that.
But
the scenario you offered me was artist and label.
Yes, but I'm talking about you. You are saying that artists have a lot more power than I think they really do. I don't think the artist can just go to the label like, I want to promote this single. The label is putting forth the money for
I'm not saying they do. What I'm saying is there's no reason for a label to tank an artist that they are investing in. The label is paying for the album to be produced. They're paying for the studio time. That's why, like, when a band has their first big, huge hit record, they're not all rich overnight because they got to pay back the advances to the label. There's, Nickelback tells these stories about how they were like 2 and 3 albums in before they saw a dime because the label took most of their money. So for people to give Nickelback a hard time, and they're not alone in that, people think that you have a hit record and you're crazy rich.
I hope they do.
That's why I could never understand with like these rappers who get crazy rich and they're like out there selling tapes out of the back of their car. I'm like, how do you have all this money? For a long time, they had money because they weren't paying the artists that they were sampling from. But record labels, for the most part, have no interest in tanking something that they're investing money in.
I think
it would be like if this company wanted my ratings to be bad. That would make no sense at all.
if you were pissing them off and you did something...
I piss them off all the time. They still don't want my ratings to be bad.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
I do.
If
but-
someone
And they want to intentionally try and make the show tank. Like, that seems silly.
Well, let's say Alan...
Anyone who was investing money in you personally would want to see a return on that investment.
You're correct. In a perfect world, they would. But let's say...
No, in any world. Nobody's looking to
Business
burn
world.
money down. Yeah, nobody's looking to throw their money away and burn it.
But you act like...
Unless they're in crypto.
One
or
artist...
a casino.
You're acting like one artist isn't replaceable. If someone else that had your talent and your pool and like your fan base, let's say you wanted to go in for your contract negotiation and you wanted more money, and the label says, no, we're not going to do that. Oh, well, I'm not going to resign. They're like, that's fine. And then they can compromise you and,
No, they just won't resign you. Why would they want to? If you're as easily replaceable as you say, whether you're an artist or whatever, they just move the next band in. They don't have to tank what you're doing. If they go, here's what we're offering, and you go, well, I don't like that. Okay, we'll just part ways then. We'll find another band that sounds like you. And so, yeah, artists don't have as much leverage because their pockets aren't as deep. But that's why when you have these artists that are practically billionaires, they're calling all their own shots. Because they're like, yeah, I don't need a label. I do it all myself. But you got to be really successful. That's why all these people selling their catalogs are legacy artists that were, they made all their money 40 years ago. When you could sell a ton of records, you could go on tour. Those days are gone. So that's why all these people are cashing in.
They have to... all the
They're
artists
like,
now.
yeah, I don't think I want to tour that much anymore. I'll just cash in. I'll sell my catalog. Sting, Stevie Nicks, Dylan, Springsteen. They're all doing it. They're selling their catalogs because they're like, this is my big payday. But there's no reason for someone who's investing in you actively to tank what you're doing.
I just feel like these labels are not to be trusted.
But you see everything through the prism of spite.
But it's not necessarily about spite.
But
it's about business.
But that's right.
You have to compromise.
It's business. It's not personal. You've
Yes.
heard that axiom. It's not personal. It's just business.
Yeah, and they have to ruin your credibility.
They don't have to ruin your credibility.
They have to ruin it, Alan. They have to break them down.
A record label can't ruin an artist's credibility.
They can.
How?
by compromising them.
How?
Just what I told you. They will.
What you told me makes no sense.
How does that not make sense?
Why would a record label or any organization that is employing and paying for someone's production, why would they actively tank their work?
Let's say if they are getting too successful. If they made enough...
Too successful? You mean they're making too much money for the record label?
No, they're not making too much money for the record label. They're making too much money for themselves.
But the cut of theirs goes to the record label.
If
There's no business that goes, hey, you're making us too much money. That has happened 0 times ever.
That's not necessarily true because, yes, a portion of there's an exploitation period where the artist will or where the label will push an artist. And after that exploitation period is up, let's say if they make their money and they want to buy their masters back. Well, they know such and such is really successful. We can't afford.
But you also know that not every artist is exploited at the beginning of their career. Some people have fantastic stories of working with their record label, and they were like, that's why artists jump labels. For artists that still work with record labels, that's why they jump labels. They go, we went over here because RCA said, you can do whatever you want. Have whatever you want. Universal wanted us to do all this weird stuff, and they didn't believe in the band. So when we gave them the albums we owed them, we split. And we got this amazing... Some people go for less money, but creative freedom.
Yeah,
they
true.
didn't pay me that much money, but I get to do what I want.
That is correct.
All I'm saying is there's no scenario in which an organization that was investing money in an artist would purposely want to see them make less money.
I think you're incorrect on that.
Okay.
It doesn't make any sense.
It literally makes no sense.
Okay.
What would
Can you
be
give
the
us
reason?
an example?
Give us an example of somebody sabotaging an artist that is making them money.
It's not necessarily making them money. Yes, there are songs will get played no matter what. Even look at R. Kelly. His songs get played no matter what. Whether he has a disgraced legacy, they don't care. I'm talking about if you are an artist and you are successful enough to buy your masters back, if a label is not doing so well, if they're like, an independent label, or if they don't have many other artists that have reached the peaks that you have,
But
they
can you
can't
give us an example?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay, but the scenario that you're saying, if you are a successful artist at a company that doesn't have many successful artists, they're going to cling to you like grim death.
That's the whole point. They can't afford you to buy your masters back.
Windup Records was a nothing label until they signed a band called Creed. And Creed put Windup on the map. They were printing money with that band 25 years ago.
They took them higher.
But when Creed, say if Creed wants to, they have to treat them really well and make sure that they're comfortable, because if Creed wants to leave, then that is their entire livelihood. That is their entire catalog.
Yes, that's why they want to make them happy.
But some labels don't.
But boutique labels always know that they're smaller and can't compete with huge ones. The labels themselves, if they're small, are hoping to get bought out by a bigger label. That happens all the time, too. And that's when some artists will get dropped. They'll go, man, we made this album. We were really excited. And then our label got bought, and the new label dropped us because they were thinning out the herd. So they just look at a spreadsheet. What are the bands with the least units sold? And they look at that spreadsheet. They don't know the bands. They don't know the music. They look at the numbers, and they go, drop the bottom 50.
And Poundcake saying they look at the top and go, they're making us too much money. They's got to go.
Too much money. Again, I think you're looking through the prism of spite.
Okay.
And if you're a smart business person, that has nothing to do with it. There are all kinds of people who hate each other, but they're making each other money.
Sure. And I'm not saying that's every scenario. I'm just thinking if labels rely on the artist to put out a certain amount of product, and if the product is successful and does well, that is great. It does make both people money. But the label is always going to make more, and they're always going to cut corners, and they're going to try and cut the artist out because they need control over the artist and the money. Otherwise, the labels won't exist.
They can't cut anything out that's not... It depends on what's in the contract.
Yeah, they're going to create contracts to screw them over.
You sign any contract is to protect the employer, not the employee. So that's true, right? This company pays me very well, but my contract is still technically to protect them, not to protect me. But that doesn't mean that there's no protections in place. So if you're an artist on a label, yeah, you've got a contract. And if the label goes, look, see, back in the day, They gave you a long time to build up your catalog. Like Springsteen was not a guy who sold a ton of records until, I don't know, Darkness on the Side of Town or one of his third or fourth albums started to sell. You don't get that these days. You haven't gotten that for a long time.
You got your EP. You better sell that bitch.
That's true, because it's so much more fragmented. So they look at people and they're like, you get way less money to produce your album, So it's just different now. All I'm saying is, business with a capital B, nobody is trying to shiv somebody who's making them money.
I have a quick question. Is this what I sounded like when I was saying that Rick had a fake life? Mm-hmm. Did it sound this ridiculous? Is what Cody's saying?
Whatever. Fine, Mary. You signed your masters away. Let's see what happens when the label has to rely on you.
Yeah, my masters to my comedy album. I'm sure they're really worried.
They are. They're going to cut you out, and they're going to make millions off of it once you're a big famous comedian, and you're going to be like, hey, I want to buy that back. And then they're going to discredit you in the media.
Yeah, right. They go, yeah, buy them, because they'll take that lump sum any day.
Fine.
Day's never finished. Master got me working. Someday Master set me free.
See, Cartman sold his masters. And by the way, somebody rightly points out, any label who did that, word would get around and then no one would sign with that label. And that's happened before too. They go, hey, this label screwed me, so don't sign with them. So you're not going to be able to maintain an artist roster after a while. You're going to have either people not signing or you're going to have people jumping ship at the first opportunity.
People are still signing with Dr. Luke after the whole Kesha fiasco.
That's because he didn't rape them, he raped her.
There's rules
allegedly.
I'm saying there's rules in place to keep people from speaking out.
But those are also producers.
Okay.
These are people who are in the studio. You know what I mean? Like,
how did he do it for so many years? Kesha wasn't the only artist. They protect him.
Who protects him?
Allegedly, like the big umbrella label.
Well, but given the way that a lot of women don't report sexual assault in the first place, it doesn't even require protection. He's just counting on them to not say anything. It's not like they had to take out we better line up the lawyers. We got a producer who's raping women. They count on women being embarrassed and scarred and terrified to not say anything. That's true in any industry.
Okay. Entertainment,
acting, music, whatever, right? So, I don't know. Keith Moon destroyed hotel rooms and the record label paid for it. Those were the good old days when Led Zeppelin would throw a television out of a fourth-floor hotel room, and the label's like, all right, we'll get it.
Yeah, that's
fine.
It was the cost of doing business. So we're making them so much goddamn money. I got a break. You want to get the last word in for anything, 35192 to text me there. Next chance to grab some money is coming up at 6:30. Cavs game tonight not till 7:30. But 6:30, next chance to grab $1,000 and go fund yourself.
This is the Alan Cox Show.
Everywhere on our free iHeartRadio app or whatever smart device you have. Just tell it to play the Alan Cox Show on iHeartRadio.
Tuesday, March 22nd, the iHeartRadio